Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Lockdown Learning for Friday, May 22nd, 2020. My name is Adam Dorfman. Hello. For those of you who don't know, our special guest today, I'm going to make an introduction here in just a moment. But my youngest sibling, Tommy Dorfman, I've known Tommy, for a while. And we've had a good number of special guests here on our Lockdown Learning over the course of the past, I guess, 8 or 9 weeks. And a lot of them have been people who are in the business world. You guys got to hear from Larry, from Scott. You got to hear from my friend Rick. You got to hear from Cody a few weeks ago. You've gotten to hear from people within our business. But I'm really fortunate that my family has a lot of people who have worked extremely hard to build lives and careers, and they're all in different areas. And Tommy, a lot of you guys may know from the work on 13 Reasons Why, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And we've got a pretty badass new ad campaign that just launched this week. So hi, Tommy.
Hi, how are you?
I am awesome. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too. I'm very impressed by your ability to live stream your Zoom on YouTube.
Well, thanks. It's we've learned some new tricks, I guess, over the course of the last 9 weeks, because I didn't know this existed 3 months ago.
Amazing.
I even got a ring light. I knew you'd be proud.
Wow.
Right. I'm like way too old to own a ring light, but whatever works. Is my favorite four-legged niece around or no?
Well, the one you haven't met is behind me.
Oh, Fiona's so pretty. I haven't met her yet, but Dabs is my baby. All right.
Yeah, continue.
Yeah, Dabs is my baby. Anyway, all right. So I want to get started, Tommy. I clearly know your childhood upbringing and background, but I was hoping for everybody who doesn't, talk a little bit about kind of how, when you first realized you wanted to get into public life, into acting, into writing. And for anybody who doesn't know, Tommy is doing everything: acting, writing, directing, photography. Had one of the coolest interviews I've ever read, is doing live interviews in photography, and is doing all kinds of really neat work. So how early did you know this was something that you wanted to do?
I feel like, so I'm Adam's youngest sibling. There's 5 of us. We're 14 years apart.
We're 14 years apart.
14 years apart. So I just turned 28. Not to.
No, they know I'm 42. It's good. I'm aging in reverse, and so it's okay.
Yeah, you look younger than me. I always loved performing. I don't know. It was always a thing that I needed to do. It was a thing that Daniel, our other brother, told me the other day, I always loved attention, which I guess is true on some level. It was my sort of way of, I think part of being the youngest sibling is finding ways to be seen. And that was just my way of, as a kid, of just trying to be seen, of trying to be noticed, of trying to get mom and dad, who were really busy working on their own careers and their entrepreneurial efforts, to also pay attention. And I fell in love with, I think our sister Stephanie was a lot of the reason that I got into performance, because I would watch her as a kid doing musical theater and dancing and all of those things. And I just wanted to be a part of that. And so I started as a ballet dancer, and then I think in high school is when I decided I really wanted to be an actor, and I fell in love with television and shows like Nurse Jackie and Weeds and Girls and all these sort of good cable television shows that were coming up when I was in high school. And so, from high school made the decision to, it was also, my grades were really bad. I was not a super academic person. I'm intelligent in different ways. I just didn't thrive. My SAT scores were fucking garbage. I didn't even take the ACT. I hated school, honestly. I just wanted to go out and explore and be in the world and be a person with other people. I didn't like the structure that school provided for me at that time. I had a few other outside issues going on, but acting was also my way into college, and it was my way out of Atlanta in many ways, and my way of getting my parents off my back. So it kind of became this, it became the fix for a lot of things at the time. And when I got to New York for school, I went to a pretty competitive college for acting. There were only 16 actors in each grade. It was there that I really fell in love with theater and plays and writing, and starting to sort of build and shape my own version of performance and what that looked like. But I was always sort of the black sheep in every program I was in. Like I was the black sheep in our family in many ways, as the black sheep in college and university. And then, you know, I was doing a lot of writing at the time as well. And I loved fashion. I loved different, just the many different ways you could express yourself and the many different ways you could tell stories, whether it was through photography or through directing or through writing. And I was doing all of that stuff in college. And then at a certain point, I decided I was just going to focus on acting and just try and make a career in that, in the hopes that I would find some success and be able to expand into the other avenues and other disciplines that I was interested in.
Well, and I think it's important that you bring that up, because you and I are 14 years apart. And it's funny because we have the same father. I've got a really young father for me being 42. Right. You've got a perfectly age appropriate father for you being 28. Right. And so our dad is like 64. Right. And so he'll be 65 this year, I guess. And so we grew up in the same household, but really at different times, because I moved out when you were 4. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because, you know, we literally are of different generations.
Yeah.
Right. So I am like quintessential Gen X and you are quintessential millennial. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that a lot of the people on our call, I think the average age of a lot of the people on this call is really early 20s to early 30s. And so you're really right in the middle of that demographic. And one of the things that we deal with as leadership in the offices is we talk a lot about people wanting to have their hands in everything. And so people may see you now and you're at Fashion Week in Milan and you're on, you know, you're all over Instagram, you're acting, you're doing photography, you're in, you know, the new Calvin Klein campaign. But a minute ago, you just said how you had all these varied interests and you made the decision, I'm going to get real fucking good at one thing. Mm-hmm. So can you talk a little bit about how you came to the decision of, I'm going to master one craft first?
Yeah. I mean, I had a mentor who kind of helped me come to that decision, because I would talk about all the things that I wanted to do and I was spreading myself so thin that I was mediocre in everything I was trying to do. But I could just get by. And he really, I mean, he sat me down and he was like, what do you want? Like, what do you want your career to look like? And I was like, I want to have my own, I mean, I was like 17. I was like, I want to have my own brand and I want to have like 40 clothing stores across the country, but I also want to like star in movies and direct movies. I mean, I just like, the list went on and on. He was like, okay, cool. Like, take a breath. That could all happen, but like, let's look at the different ways that you can get there. And to me, acting felt like, once I started at the top of my pyramid of like what I wanted my life to look like, and I worked down and I was like, okay, I could try being a writer and write plays and then get on a TV, you know, like I looked at that route. I also had a lot of different internships, because I was still trying things out in college. So I interned in fashion and I left acting school and like worked in fashion for a little bit. And I interned at Refinery 29, which is like an online editorial blog when they were a startup. And I was like, well, maybe I'll get my break as a writer writing, I don't know, about fashion or about like celebrity culture, which was really uninteresting to me once I got there. And it just, everything kind of led me back to acting. Like the universe kept leading me back. And I also had this like need in my body to perform and to engage with people in that way, on a cathartic level, but also on just a human level. And so then I just put everything else aside and was like, okay, I'm going to commit to this thing. And I set very specific goals within that one avenue. You know,
so I'll ask you a question that I didn't prep you for, but I want to know your answer for. How does it make you feel when someone tells you how lucky you are?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
not fortunate, but lucky.
Right.
There's a difference, right?
Distinction, right? You know what? That's your opinion. And in many cases, maybe I am. Maybe that this was just sort of like, if you're a person who believes in God, I'm a person who believes in God in some capacity. Maybe this is just like bestowed upon me at birth and like just everything was meant to work out. From my experience, I have had 20,000 times more rejection than I've had acceptance in anything I've tried to do. Everything feels like swimming upstream.
Right, and that's why I brought it up, is because so many times somebody sees someone who's successful in whatever their endeavor is, right? The people who call you lucky when you're winning are the ones who called you crazy when you were starting out as something.
Oh, well, that's totally true. I mean, I was talking to Peter, my husband, about this the other day, because we've been together now since I was 20, so almost 8 years, which is crazy. And so he's seen a lot of different versions of me. But before having any success in my field, a really lost version at 20 to the person now who's more grounded and sort of like holding the reins on my career and like really making decisions in a different way than I was able to at 20. And he talked about sort of my inability to, I like wouldn't even hear the word no. If that makes sense. It was like, it would come in and I'd be like, yeah, okay, whatever. You don't get it, that's fine. You don't get it, that's fine. I'm gonna just keep wading through people and institutions to find people who believe in me and to find people who will support me in my endeavors. And it was a lot of like suit up and show up and fake it until I make it kind of shit too. Because I just had to like tell people that I was already the thing that I wanted to be.
I think that sounds pretty successful to a lot of young up and coming entrepreneurs who are listening in or watching this right now, where, you know, you come in and you put on your suit and I love it. You suit up and you show up and you fake it until you make it.
Up. And it's like, for me, like I wanted to photograph something. I'd never photographed anything in my life. I found the right person to talk to who would believe in me to just be like, hey, I want to photograph a magazine cover. This is my concept. They were like, have you done this before? I'm like, no, but I know I can. And like that person was just a little like crazy enough to believe that I could.
And this was the Pete Davidson interview, right?
Yeah, I photographed Pete Davidson for the cover of Paper Magazine, which is like an iconic New York, decades old magazine. And it was just certain things like that where you're like, yeah, I can do this. Like, I know I can do this. And the day was full of fear. And like the whole time I was fighting with myself being like, oh my God, you're going to fuck this up. Oh my God, it's going to be a complete fucking disaster. No one's going to trust you again. But it all works out fine. What I've learned is to build a team of people who know how to do what you want to do better to learn from in whatever field, right? So it's like I try to find and connect myself with actors who are more established than me so that I can learn from them. Or writers. Like I've made a lot of friends with writers since moving to LA because I've just written 2 screenplays, but I needed to sort of like be friends with them and be around them to see how they did it and get their support. And like that belief that like, yes, I'm going to do a lot of these things. I'm going to accomplish a lot, but like also the understanding, the humility to say I can't do it alone and being able to ask for help. And
it's funny because I've got comments coming in and it says the same mindset we have with doing what we do, you have in acting. The system doesn't change. It's just the platform.
Totally.
Right. So it doesn't, if you want to be a great golfer, you go find a great golf coach.
Completely the same. Yeah. I mean, I often find, and that's why like I think I relate to you so much, and I can still relate to Dad and other entrepreneurs. And my husband works for a small startup in Los Angeles. Because at the end of the day, if you take out the circumstances, the specifics of them, we're all doing the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so one of the concepts that we talk about a lot is in our business is, you know, I introduced Dad to a book called Start With Why, Simon Sinek's book, about 6 years ago. And you and I talked yesterday a little bit, just kind of prepping for today. And this concept of to get through a level of rejection like it takes to be successful anywhere, whether you're Mark Cuban sleeping on your buddy's floor eating ketchup sandwiches, or you're an athlete that gets cut from a team, or you're in a business where you get rejected a million times to build a business, or you're in a career like yours where you get rejected a million times to get a yes. I mean, you know, people know you from 13 Reasons. You had been acting for almost a decade by the time you landed that role. How many auditions do you think you got told no to before you got to that big one?
What's interesting is I didn't get into any of the acting schools I wanted to get into in high school. So that was the first like big memorable no. Like feeling like, fuck, I'm never gonna make it. I went to a community college for 6 months in Chicago that had no audition. And a lot of that was due to my grades, right? And so I was in Chicago, and while I was there, I was able to like get a 4.0 that semester, get really good rec letters from teachers there who were like, get out, you don't need to be here, you should be somewhere else, and then get into a much better university in New York. And then when I was there, it was like I never got cast in a main stage play. So like there's 4 plays you do a year, and it's like the top theater. You know, it's a small program, but there's still people who are rising to the top, right? Like in every field. And I was always like sinking to it's just like I was going like lower and lower to the bottom as people were going up as far as like getting cast and stuff. And I just remember feeling like very left out, like I wasn't ever going to really make it because there were these people who were just like organically, naturally so confident and successful. And I had all these other things going on that were getting in my way. And I was doing a lot of drugs, and I was drinking a lot. I had like a lot of stuff. But I knew I still like on the inside, like I had this why, right? Because our dad would talk about the why of like, okay, and that why has changed. And then I didn't get into, I got sober and I went back to school, and everything was like, when I was like, I'm going to fucking show these people like how good I am. Like my ego was up. I was ready to go. I was like, I'm going to get into the best grad school for acting. And I got into 0 grad schools for acting. I was like, shit, fuck, like you're constantly having this conversation where I'm like, I'm fooling myself. I'm unqualified. I need to move back to Atlanta. Like this isn't going to work out. And then I had a really awesome teacher who kind of like swerved in and was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I want to be an actor. And they're like, okay, but what kind of actor? I was like, well, I want to be an actor who makes enough money to support a family, because I want to have a family in 10 years. And a lot of acting, it's very complicated. You don't make a lot of money unless you're in a certain level. And she was like, okay, so you're not going to do theater. And I was like, I guess not. I guess I'm going to go do TV and film. And she was like, great, you can go do that. You don't need to go to grad school for that. So like pick yourself back up, figure it out. And I was like, fuck, okay. So I made really specific goals that were like, all right, if my why at this age is to be an actor who has enough money that so I don't have to rely on my parents or rely on other people, and I can support a family one day, I'm going to go be on TV. And so I said no to everything else. Anything else, any audition that came my way that was for theater or an unpaid thing with a friend or a small whatever, or like doing an internship, I was like, no, I'm going to like work at a bagel shop, and I'm only going to audition for TV shows, period. And I was like, and I gave myself 5 years. I was like, you have 5 years to get on a TV show as a series regular, which means you're in every episode basically, which means like you're getting paid. When you're just a co-star, let me explain the finances of TV, because I think people get really confused. When you're a co-star, when you're in one episode of TV, you're probably getting like around $1,200, and that's it. And that could be the only job you get that year, right? So you have to find ways to make money in other avenues as an actor. If you're a guest star, typically, if you're on a network show, anywhere between $5,000 and $8,000 for that episode, but that's it. Maybe you'll do 5 episodes, you'll have a really good year, but there's no guarantees. You're a series
you did that last year, right?
What?
That kind of the guest star.
Okay, I've only recurred. I've never been a series regular, actually. So I'm still like waiting in my 5 years, which is funny. But I've only recurred as guest star. So I've only made between, and it's fine to talk about, but it's like I've only made between $2,500 and $8,500 an episode. And I haven't done that many episodes of TV, because once you remove taxes and agency fees and all of these things, it's not a lot of money until you're like on another level. Like I still don't make enough money from acting to support my family and myself and might pay for my dogs and their vet bills. So you have to find other ways, right?
But it's projected you in a direction where you've been able to establish a level of notoriety, honor your why. And
yeah. So now my why has changed, right? Now my why is, okay, I basically did the thing I said I was going to do in 5 years. I did it in like a year, because I got on like a really good TV show. And even though I didn't make series regular money, I got a level of notoriety that allowed me to amortize other parts of my life and monetize them, and just make money in other ways, which was great, because it opened me up to fashion, a world that I always wanted to work in. It opened me up to writing and directing and different types of connections in that way. And now my why, and I just spent a lot of time earlier this year solidifying it again and really like processing it again. And like, I don't know if you can see, I have like note cards up there of like things that I
Love it.
want to accomplish. And I did this after college too. I wrote down like, get an agent, get a job, X, Y, and Z. And then I take them down as they happen and I re-put things up. But my why now is like, I want to tell stories that are specifically, I just want to tell better queer stories, period. That's my log line, or my, I don't know what you call it in the business world, my mission sentence. It's just like, I want to tell better queer stories so that I can open up people's eyes to LGBTQ experiences.
But that's a true why statement. It's you know, the idea of a why, some people think a why is I'm going to buy the boat or I'm going to support my family. Those aren't whys. Why is why whatever being you deem to be the one that
what gets me up in the morning.
Well, it's why you showed up on the planet.
Right.
So I mean, you can, and one of the things that we fight through as coaching people who are of the mindset of I've got to follow my passion. You've got two things. You've got your passion and you've got your purpose.
Right.
And sometimes the passion doesn't pay all the bills. And sometimes the purpose is gonna, if you follow the purpose instead of the passion, and you focus in on the real reason you're here, you'll find a way to get it done if it really matters to you. And one of the things you talked about was your sobriety, and I'd like to go back to it for a minute because, I mean, candidly, there was a long time where some of us were scared to death of the phone call we might get.
Right.
And I remember where I was standing. We were into a very tough period of our business that I was working my way through. And I remember I was standing in a Walmart selling AT&T service, and you called my cell phone, and I stepped outside and I answered, and you told me that you were going to go work on stuff. And I was just like, I was in tears in a fucking Walmart parking lot, which is, you know, there you go. But
I've been in tears in Walmart parking lots for different reasons.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, the point is we've got this point of, you know, when you made that decision, when you decide you're going to do something, you do it. So we're at, you know, June's going to be what, 7 years?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's a long time. And you're in an industry that's not exactly known for, you know, being.
Well, I'm in an industry that has, you know, both ends of the pendulum. There's not a lot of people in the middle.
Right.
You either have sober people or you have people who are reliant on drugs and alcohol to get through whatever they need to get through.
So when you meet a lot of people, they'll tell you that they can't do something because it's just how they're made. Right? I mean, I'm sure you've met people like this for years. Well, this is just the way I was raised, or this is just what I believe in, or this is just how I am.
They see no other way.
Sorry?
They limit themselves and they see no other way of doing things.
Right. So how'd you get your head around it? And I mean, that had to be a tough battle for you. And, you know, how did you get your head around it and make the decision to do what was really hard and then stick with it when it was really not easy to stick?
Yeah. I mean, it's a daily practice, right? I still every day have to make that choice of, now I have time to reflect and be like, okay, being sober has provided way more positives in my life, even in my worst days, than being drunk or using drugs did. At that time, it was a matter of choosing life. You know, like that's really what it was. Like it was like, if I keep doing this, I'm going to die. If I want to live a life, and I don't know what that looks like yet, but I know that like I woke up and I was just aware of like, oh, like I've been kicked out of school. I've never finished any program. I can't even like brush my teeth or make my bed. Like there's just certain things that like other people started growing up and doing things. And I was like, why can't I function? And it became really clear to me that a lot of the reason I perhaps wasn't getting cast in plays in college and like wasn't doing stuff is because no one saw me as a reliable, responsible person. Because I would show up to school drunk or on drugs. Like, so that just, for whatever reason, I had a wake-up call of my own making, or of the universe, or whatever woo-woo stuff you believe in. For me, it was like everything kind of came together in this one moment, and the door was open, and I could just see clearly enough to realize that my life was not worth living if I was going to continue to do drugs and alcohol the way that I was, because I was never going to make it out of the bed, let alone like make it into a TV show or into a movie, or be able to like tell queer stories where I am now, right? Like be able to embody that in a way. And I just had to make that choice. It just was it was like to explain why is so confusing even to me. However, I know that now that all of my faculties are basically restored, I don't have to deal with hangovers to try and get things done during the day. I'm hydrated, I'm healthy. My body is my instrument, you know, in what I do. And it kind of always has been. Like, I wore all girls' clothes as a kid. I've always been telling queer stories, even if they were my own. I've always been opening people's eyes up to this. Now I can look back and be like, oh, my why's always been there.
Do you remember the first time that Laura and I ever watched you?
No.
Like, after we started dating, we were like, my dad was like, hey, can you guys keep an eye on Tommy for the day? And we were like, totally. What do you want to do? And I until our last move, I still had, you wanted to go to Limited too and go shopping.
Yeah.
And we were like, kick ass, let's go. But you have been telling your own story since you were 6 years old.
Right. And a lot of that wasn't easy as a kid. It wasn't easy to be that different. It wasn't easy to be the only one in your school who dressed the way that you dressed, or like didn't express their gender identity in the same way as other people did. And I think a lot of my drugs and alcohol, once I found drugs and alcohol, that became my way of like coping with all of the anxiety and the fear and confusion that was going on in my body and my system. Like, growing up in Georgia is just a very different person than most people in Georgia. Or
people see Atlanta and then they forget that, like, aside from Midtown, the rest of Georgia is basically Mississippi.
Right, and we were mostly raised in the suburbs,
right?
And like going back and forth to Alabama and North Carolina and like football games in Florida. For me, when you know, like, you didn't go to that many Georgia Florida games, but I was like at every NASCAR and Georgia Florida game. It was like I was this weird like kid, you know. I was just different, and so drugs and alcohol were like, oh, I don't have to worry about all that. Fear went away, but then it turned into a different type of fear and anxiety that got in my way. And so yeah, and what's interesting is it's like once I put that stuff down, my life changed so dramatically. Once I was able to like make my bed and brush my teeth and show up for myself and respect myself in those ways, I was suddenly able to respect myself and show up for myself in my business.
So we talk a lot about doing the hard things first. And I think everybody's got their own addiction, whether that addiction is drugs and alcohol, that addiction could be self-doubt, that addiction could be food, the addiction could be laziness, the addiction could be the internet in the sense of social media and constantly consuming garbage, which is, I mean, you know, people talk about eating healthy and drinking enough water. You got to watch the shit you put in your brain more than you do into the stuff you put in your body, right?
Right.
So one of the things we have talked about, you know, we talk about people who on paper are as different as can be. I know that you actually, you and Dave Anderson have actually hung out on a couple of occasions.
Mm-hmm.
And we had Dave on to speak a few weeks ago. And between him and LD and Scott and my buddy Rick, who spoke for us a couple of weeks ago, I don't know if you remember Cody Friesen, my college roommate. Cody spoke for us last week.
Telling me what he's doing, which is incredible.
It's nuts, right?
I don't have a brain for science or math, and so I can't even wrap my head around that conceptually, but that's great.
Yeah. And that's what we talked about. We were like the biggest odd couple ever, because I was like writing music and he was writing, you know, equations out of his brain that created new things that I don't even know. I just Google shit. He Googles
solar power into water. I couldn't even dream of it. My brain does not go there.
Nuts, right? So,
Thank God his does.
But what's cool is everybody who we've talked to, whether it's this scientific genius who has figured out how to turn sun rays into water, or a ultra conservative Christian motivational speaker, or an advocate for telling the queer story, or me, the 5'7" Jew sitting in my attic right now, we all have the same concept of how do you program your brain every day to get ready to go to battle. So I'm curious what your daily, like, all right, I'm getting my Superman suit on is.
Yeah, I mean, I, like everybody else in the world, am adjusting to this new life and what it means to, you know, for me. Well, I want to talk pre-quarantine for a second, because
I was actually not even thinking quarantine. I'm talking like
just in
normal life.
Yeah, I mean, so I have a thing called alcoholism, which usually when I wake up in the morning makes me like very irritable and like discontent. It's like all of those things I used to drink to cure, I have to find other ways to cure. So I need to like, when I wake up in the morning, I'm just not the type of person who wakes up like, yay, life, can't wait. I'm the type of person who wakes up like, can I please crawl in a hole for the next month? I was a kid who like would dream of waking up 15 years later with everything figured out and worked out. But it became very clear to me that that was never going to be an option. And I had a therapist who told me like, I used to try and date older rich guys to take care of me. Because I was like, oh, if I just had enough money, I just wouldn't, everything would be fine. And he was like, you have to be your own older rich guy. And I was like, oh, fuck, okay.
So funny.
Okay, so how do I be my own daddy in that sense, right? I was like, how am I going to figure this out? And so, yeah, so now it's, what do? I get up, I leave my phone on my bedside table. I take care of other things. Like I try to take care of other people and be of service. Those are like that's like the first thing I try to do, which is so not me. Like if you grew up with me, like, you know, that's just like the antithesis of me.
Well, it's not either of us naturally.
No, it's not.
We both worked our asses off to be like that. What?
It's not human beings naturally in many cases. So I take care of my dogs. Those are the things in my life that depend on me. So I feed them and I walk them and I make sure they poop and they pee. Basics done. I make coffee for everyone in the house because I'm usually the first one up. And then I go to my office where I'm sitting now and I read some literature. Like I'm reading the Book of Awakening by Mark Nepo, which like I'm sure Dad talked about. There's a daily passage in it every day, and it helps me.
I wonder if we did a poll here, how many people have that sitting on their bedstand? If somebody, I've personally purchased over, I think, right at 100 copies that have.
It's great. It's fantastic. I know really famous actors and directors who read it every day too. It crosses. It's just about the human spirit, period. And it's about love and showing up for yourself and showing up for others. And it helps me refocus, and I do pray and I meditate, and like, you know, it takes me about an hour to adjust to the day and be like, okay, now I can look at my emails and not be super reactive right away. Now I can look at text messages or whatever. Because my team texts me, they email me. It's like I wake up with lists of notifications in the morning, and then it's a matter of trusting that there's enough time in the day where I'll get to that. It doesn't need to be the first thing I look at in the morning. Because my brain, like, I can't trust my brain in the first hour of the day. I'll say things that are just like inhumane.
So we go back to that concept of your ultimate power as a human being is to put separation between stimulus and response.
Totally. Pause. Period.
So it really goes back to Viktor Frankl was one of the first people to write about it in Man's Search for Meaning. And then Stephen Covey talked about it in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And then you hear every leader talk about this concept. Simon Sinek talks about it. You hear guys like Mark Manson, who's this new voice of, I don't know if you've read any of his stuff yet or not, but he's this new voice of just absolute extreme separation between, you know, and choosing to create it. I mean, his 2 books are called, one is called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And then the second one is called Everything is Fucked, a Book About Hope. And, you know, it's the same concept. So what I think is so cool is these people are hearing from you, totally different industry than they're in, right? Totally different life path. They're hearing the same advice from you as they read from a Jewish Holocaust survivor, as they read from Dave Anderson, as they heard from Stephen Covey, as they heard from our dad, as they hear from, you know, and it's funny that it just, and by the way, this is not, people probably think, and I want to point this out, that when you and I were growing up, LD was like talking about Buddhism and mindset.
No, he was like an angry man.
What?
He was like an angry man.
Right. It's like the guy that y'all hear from, the spirit's the same, but he worked 100 hours a week and was the king of reactivity, just like you and I both were.
So yeah, we inherited reactivity, and then we had to inherit or find our own tools to deal with that.
Right. And so we've both, and what's cool, what to me, I think is nuts is we've all found that path in our own way. And if
Mhm.
you had asked if you had asked us 10 years ago, if we ever thought that we'd be waking up, me, you and dad all reading the same book, that would
Crazy.
have been a funny laugh.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the reactiveness has been so beneficial in many ways in my career. It's just a part of self that that I've had to harness and find ways to, and I use it, as an actor. Acting is reacting, so I need to be able to be like open and reactive and listening enough to respond to them in the moment that I need to respond to, and multitask and all of those things. But when it comes to getting an email from my husband about he's upset with me about a certain thing that I did, and he finds his way to express it is better through email, or if something doesn't go right in work and I didn't get the money I was supposed to get for a thing, or didn't come in on time, I need to make sure that that reactiveness I use in my art doesn't come out as like, well, fuck you, get the job done. So I actually wait 24 hours to respond to most important things,
That's
which
really
is which is painful, because I'm like, well, if it doesn't happen now, it's never going to happen. And if I don't do it, it's never going to happen the way that I need it to. All this, so much selfishness and self-centeredness. And it's like, no, wait, have enough faith that like nothing, there's very few things that can't wait a day.
Right.
That's
And the fact that we think they can't shows our own sense of self-importance, right?
And the nice thing about, if I can find a positive in isolation and self-quarantine and every industry being shut down, unless you are an essential worker, my industry shut down, no one's filming anything. It's an incubator for writing and other sorts of development and creativity, but I don't get to act right now. I don't get
we don't get to sell right now, right? When we talked about this yesterday,
I don't get to make the thing that I sold, like, period. Like, we're just like talking about making the thing that I sold. So whatever it is, it's just made me realize that like, we don't have to rush. And my hope is that when we reintegrate into society, for me at least, I want to maintain some of that. I want to remember that there were 4 months in my career where I was still able to make some money, still able to get some stuff done. Maybe it wasn't as much money, maybe it wasn't as successful or as busy, found different ways to do it, but I didn't have to rush to anything. And so how do I carry that with me, right? Like, that's the thing that I'm trying to figure out, is like, as the world starts to open up, I live in Los Angeles, as Los Angeles starts to open up, as work starts to come back on the horizon, how do I not rush?
And we're all gonna figure it out, right?
Yeah, I've slept so much better. I've been such a better husband. I've been such a better friend. I've been able to show up for people in my life, people that I work with, people that work for me. During this time, I've been more present than I've ever been able to be. And how do I carry that with me when I have to get on a plane every other week?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
All
And
of these things.
we talked about this time, it's either going to be a coffin or a cocoon for a lot of people, right?
Right. I have to believe that it's a cocoon.
Yeah, you have to, and you've got to take it. So I've got a couple of questions from the
Yeah.
group. I've got Kali is in Lexington, Kentucky. Hey.
Oh, cool. My husband has family there.
Oh, cool. Hey, Tommy. Honestly,
sorry, I'm trying to find.
Oh, you're fine.
Oh, cool.
Hey.
Hi.
So I just want to say thank you for being so authentic. Like, you've instantly become probably my favorite guest speaker that Adam's brought on. So
thank you.
My question for you is, how has your husband handled your rejections over the years and your endless pursuit of your goals?
He is, and Adam can probably attest to this, I think, I don't believe in soulmates.
Aside from being tied with Laura and Kathy for the most patient human beings in the world?
He's extremely, extremely patient, loving, and tolerant, and non-judgmental. He is all of the things I am not. So he's just been super supportive and super understanding and accepting, and he's kind of just been he was a cheerleader for me getting sober. He was a cheerleader. He's just been, for whatever, I mean, I'm so fortunate to have him. As much as different as we are, as like much as he gets on my nerves and I get on his nerves, I'm sure. I think he didn't ask for a public life. He didn't ask for any of these things, but he recalls our first date and he asked me, like, he was like, oh, well, like, what do you do? And I was 20 and I was like, I'm going to be a brand. That's what I told him, like 7 martinis in, I'm sure. And he was like, okay, cool. Good luck. I'm gonna, at the time he was doing real estate, but what we share is an entrepreneurial spirit. He's obsessed with entrepreneurs. He's obsessed with people who like make their own careers. And what I brought to the table for him was a fearless ability to just like run a mile a minute and get the thing done. I brought to him a mentality that he doesn't have, which is, I can do that. I've never done it before, but I can do it. And I'm going to ask for help and I'm going to figure out a way to do it. And he's the type of person who will sit and read a book 17 times and wait. And so what we've done in the course of our almost 8-year relationship is met in the middle. We're like, I'm now sitting and reading books and waiting a little bit more. And he's like, fuck it, I'm going to go for it a little bit more. So we've been able to balance each other out. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's
that's just what a partnership is, right?
Yeah.
And then there's this concept.
It's not always equal.
Never.
There's times when my shit falls apart and he's like thriving. And he picks me back up, or he's falling apart and I pick him back up. And it's just a dance that we do.
Well, there's this great line from the movie Rocky where Rocky's talking about Adrian. And he goes, I got gaps and she got gaps, but together we got no gaps.
Mm.
And I mean, the story of how that movie got made is a testament to that line.
Yeah.
So, it's really cool. So I've got Daniel Mason has a question.
Great.
Hey, Tommy. Thank you so much for doing this call with us today. I really appreciate hearing your story and stuff. And, I was doing some research and I seen that you got awarded a Rising Star Award through the GLAAD program.
Oh, glad, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just interested to see how that inspired you or motivated you more for your mission and kind of like what kind of contributions you made to the org.
Well, I feel like I got that very early in my career. Like I didn't really understand it, but at the same time, it was extremely validating and it helped me realize that I was like doing the right thing. I mean, GLAAD is an organization that its sole purpose is to fight for LGBTQ representation in media. And sometimes that means like fighting the government and getting laws made and laws changed. And also very celebratory of people who are telling these stories, whether it's Ryan Murphy with Pose or American Horror Story, or me on a TV show playing a gay kid who happens to also be like out and queer. And so I think them recognizing me early in my career just really helped me feel like, oh, right, I have a place here and I can continue to have a place here. And I now have an entire organization that has my back, because what I think people don't understand are people who are like, well, why do we need more queer representation? Or why does it matter? And it's like, well, like, or like the people who are like straight lives matter, right? Or like there's definitely those people and you're like, right, but like you've had centuries of telling stories that aren't actually examples of all of human existence, right? They're just very specific, like female male love stories. And I think it's really important that like as the world is extremely diverse and that diversity needs to be seen on television so that people can become more understanding of it. So
well, I mean, how different would you have maybe felt in high school if you had seen an example of a queer relationship that was okay?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it would have changed a lot of.
Well, meaning not like in life, but like on TV or in a movie.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I mean, like there was like one example and it was Will and Grace, you know what I mean? And like, I didn't really relate to any of those characters.
Well, and they were all assholes to each other all day.
Right. And so,
like, oh my God, wait, 2 men can be together and not be jerks, like, because that was the only, because they were awful to each other. The whole show was built around everybody, straight or gay, being an asshole to everybody else.
Yeah. So what does it look like to have a happy ending for a queer person, or them not to die of AIDS in a movie? You know what I mean? Like, it was, right. There was like so many. So GLAAD's been there on the forefront fighting for equality and representation across the board. And what I've done for them since is I've done multiple different, I've lended my voice and my face and my influence, if you will, to campaigns that help raise money for them. Most recently, I did a collaboration with UGG that, UGG donated $125,000 to GLAAD as part of like my deal, right, of doing the thing with them. So I make sure that like these organizations are getting the money that they need, especially since a lot of government funding has been cut for most LGBTQ organizations / all. So at least on a national level, so they need to raise funds. These nonprofits need to raise funds in other ways. So I do my best to tie in every single like brand deal I do to have some charity on the back end, whether it's a percentage of sales or a one-time donation. So that's how I give back to the organizations that have helped me.
That's awesome. And we have one more. We have time for one more question. So Alethea, you're up.
Awesome. Hi, Tommy. It's so nice to virtually meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you too.
So my question is, everyone has their own forms of self-sabotage. It could be, self-doubts, or it could be something like alcohol or drug abuse, or, being too reactive. So for you, what's your way of recognizing when those patterns are happening, and how do you stop them?
Yeah. I mean, often it's too late, right? Often and that's okay. Sometimes I catch myself before, and that's great. And like I've not praised myself, but I acknowledge like that was a good thing. Like you really did pause and you caught yourself there, right? But often it's after the fact. And it's like, oh, damn, I really wish I hadn't said it that way, or sent the email that way, or yelled at my husband when he didn't really do anything wrong. And I try to investigate where that started from. And I try to make amends as quickly as possible. Like I try to keep my side of the street clean, right? So like those things are important because those are the things that, one, it helps me learn the lesson, whatever it is, small or big. And two, it keeps me guilt-free and keeps my conscience clear so that I can go back and do the work that I'm meant to do. And what happens is like part of my self-sabotage is I'll beat myself up for doing the wrong thing, or being too reactive, or not being grown up enough, or not being mature enough, or making mistakes. And so I've had to find ways to curb that self-hatred. And a lot of it is by, even if I sent the email 5 minutes ago, sending another email right after, being like, I'm really sorry. The way that was worded was, I didn't intend on it coming out so sharp. I really appreciate the work that you do. Is there anything I can do to better communicate with you? You know what I mean? Like trying to just like open up that dialogue and not feel the fear of, because often what happens is like, I'm afraid to apologize or I'm afraid of being wrong, or all those things come up. And it's like, no, I have to just like admit my faults. And what I found is like by being vulnerable with other people, they in turn find compassion for me. They want to be vulnerable with me. It opens up a different level of understanding and deepens a relationship on the work level that often leads to more success for me. Like I can track it now. So it's like, that's really what it's been about, which has been, I don't know if that really answered your question, but yeah, just tracking those things and knowing that like, it's never going to be perfect. I'm never going to be cured. I'm never going to be a person who's not reactive. I can only continue to sharpen my tools and build more tools to combat some of those self-destructive behaviors. But also being nice to myself along the way and not beating myself up when I 2 step forward, 1 step back.
And I've got, let's see, we have got a question from Rachel. So I'm going to unmute Rachel because she's got a great question, which is next steps and what are you working on, which is always a fun one.
Yeah.
Hi, Tommy. Really great to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you too.
So my question for you is, do you have any next steps, whether it's new roles or new shoots that are coming up, scripts, fashion, whatever it is that you're really excited about and that are going to take you to the next level?
Yeah. I mean, I'm supposed to be doing a movie in April which obviously didn't happen. So a lot of it's been like, okay, putting that stuff aside that I think hopefully will continue to happen in the fall. There's no guarantees. But I'm really excited about, I'm producing a movie that I'm directing and starring in, that we're trying to shoot at the end of this year, which has been, actually this sort of cocoon time has been really, really beneficial for that, because it's allowed me time to work on it and make it the best it could possibly be and not rush things. I believe I am shooting a TV show in June, but under completely new guidelines with isolation and with COVID-19 and making sure that everyone stays safe using PPE and smaller crews and all of those things, which is great. And I think will continue to take me on to the next level, so to speak. And yeah, I mean, those are my main focuses. It's like I have 2 movies that I'm trying to get made, and this TV show that I'm doing, and then a movie that I'm going to act in. And hopefully, it's interesting. I'm trying to transition not out of TV entirely, but I want to do more features and more film. So it's been a matter of saying no to some of the TV stuff in the last 6 months to make that work in some way. But yeah, I'm ready. I think I'm ready now to be telling my own stories as a director, and that's the stuff that I'm trying to do, and hopefully we'll get the opportunity to do.
Awesome.
That is really cool. All right, and then we've got I've got a question from Jasmine Bennett. So I'm going to let Jasmine. We had quick answers. So Jasmine, go for it.
Hi, thank you for your time, first of all. But I just saw this movie called Moonlight, and I wanted to ask you how you felt about that movie coming out, because it was such a breakthrough for the community. So I just wanted to ask you about that.
Oh, I love Barry Jenkins, and I love that film, and I'm so glad that you watched it. It's so important for people to tell diverse stories in the LGBTQ space. So like, this is a story about it's a Black male coming of age story. And it's told by, it's based off a play written by a Black gay male, and it's people telling their own stories, period, which is so beautiful and so powerful and so poignant. And it also opens up our eyes to this type of community in Florida in a way that only a beautiful film can, in a way that, like, the reason art is so important is because it does have the capacity to influence people or educate people. And Moonlight, to me, is such a prolific film because it opened up my parents' eyes to a different community that they wouldn't have previously understood. I mean, even me, someone who is in the LGBTQ space under that umbrella, it opened me up and makes me more compassionate towards people that I knew existed, but not in that way. And what's great about that film is it got the funding it needed to be made. It's made really, really well, and to the point where it had a critical response that brought it to the masses. And what it does is a film like Moonlight opens up doors for other films to be made, because it makes producers and financiers in my industry more confident that, because what often happens is people don't want to finance queer stories because they don't think they're going to be profitable, or they're not going to get critical acclaim, or they want to cast straight actors in queer roles because they don't believe that queer actors are going to be profitable or can sell movie tickets or whatever. And Moonlight's a film that challenges that, and that shows the world, actually, these stories, when they're told, and they're told well, and they're invested in, and they're given the right marketing budgets, and all of these things can come together to be extremely successful.
And win 3 Academy Awards.
And win 3 Academy Awards. Right, but that's part of it. And that acknowledgement allows for storytellers like Barry Jenkins to go on and tell, I mean, Barry Jenkins' focus is telling Black stories, period, whether they're queer or not queer. And that's his why, right? And so now he has the ability to go on and finance and continue that sort of legacy and build that legacy for himself as a storyteller, which is just remarkable. And on the other side, it opens up doors for people like me to tell queer stories in a different way.
Well, Tommy, we're at the end of the time. Normally, we do a little thank you gift of a bottle of whiskey to our speakers. You don't drink, so we made a donation we made a donation to Alley Forney Center.
Oh, thank you so much.
So I figured that's something that you're really passionate about, and that means a lot to you. And so did that instead of sending you alcohol, because I thought that would be kind of a shitty thing to do.
That's so much better.
All right. Well, we have a tradition at the end of our calls. I'm going to take us off of our speaker view. I'm going to unmute everybody. Thank you for your time, and we're going to give you a little round of applause from the
Bye.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yay.